Good morning and welcome to this great day. It's morning at NTV has already gotten done. I'm Andrew Chamagran. Today we're going to have a very great discussion. It's about children, and we're having a virtual national dialogue on the future of education and the children. In the wake of COVID-19, a lot is actually underway, a lot is actually happening. But I will tell you that don't take off your mask because you just saw me taking off my mask. I'm actually taking off for purposes of clarity, that you and I can be in position to communicate better. So the conversation we're going to have today, we're trying to look at how best can we navigate through the education sector and how best can we bring about children to speed, given that COVID-19 has disrupted the education, and what strategies do we have as a nation to plug into? This conversation is going to be, of course, on the virtual world, that is Zoom, and we'll be joined by great personalities from the Ministry of Education and Sports, and we'll have the ones from the World Vision, and of course we have other great panelists that are coming, technical people from the education sector. To start this conversation, I'm joined by Mr. Henry Semakula, a former teacher, someone who understands the education, and is here to discuss with us. Good morning, Mr. Semakula.
Good morning, Andrew.
Perfect. There you're much more audible.
Glad to be here to
Good
discuss
to see you.
Critical issues affecting our country and our children around this time.
Very exciting.
Yes, please.
And of course, we have Mr. Kaboyo Patrick from EWAD. Mr. Kaboyo, before I go further, what is EWAD? I've been seeing it, but I didn't get to the core of it.
Thank you, Andrew, and good morning, viewers. EWAD is education advocacy with a difference.
With a difference?
Yes, it is a platform that does national, regional, and local advocacy.
For education purposely?
Yes.
Today we are looking at the reflections of the past, the realities of the present, and the perspectives for the future with regards to education amidst the COVID-19. I want to start with you, Mr. Kaboyo, given that you're at the forefront of all this. What could be your opening remarks that could give us an overview of what we're getting into?
I hope I'm not giving the opening remarks now, but maybe take us through, or the viewers who are tuned in, to understand why this national dialogue. You realize that since candidates sat their papers and results have been coming out, being released by the ministry, there is uncertainty, there is fear, there is paranoia that maybe education institutions are not going to continue. We also have issues of teachers who didn't embrace vaccination. But we have seen that for schools to open now, every stakeholder in the education sector need to take charge of ensuring that teachers are fully vaccinated to ensure that learners are safe. And those are the issues that are going to center in the opening remarks that I will make when we open officially. And maybe to remind viewers that this national dialogue will be officially opened by the Honorable Minister of State for Youth and Children, Honorable Sarah Mateke from the Ministry of Gender. And we shall also have the Director, Basic and Secondary Education, Minister of Education and Sports, Haj Ismail Mlindwa, give us a keynote speech. And then other eminent panelists, as you said, will follow. But also this big and important dialogue is proudly sponsored or supported by World Vision Uganda, UNICEF, International Aid Services, Save the Children, Oxfam, Pact Uganda, and others. So we are glad to be here to join you on NTV.
That is good. That is Patrick Kaboyo. I understand we have a couple of people on Zoom. Just to check on my panelists on Zoom, let me check in. A very good morning, Richard Ramsey. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good morning. You're live?
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Okay.
Good to be here.
I have Richard. It's an honor to have you. That is the director, program quality director at the World Vision Uganda. He's with us this early morning. We're waiting for Honorable Sarah Mateke to actually open up this conversation. It's a dialogue. you and I can actually be a part of. Just go online and follow NTV, and we get into this conversation as fast as it is. As we're waiting for the minister to come through, Mr. Semakula, yes, just to, look at the challenges, the realities, especially in education. You, as someone who is so deeply grounded into it, what do you make of the entire sequence of education where we are not sure the uncertainty where school is starting when, or it's not coming back so soon, and the realities that are hitting the parents so hard?
Sure. Yes, Andrew, when you talk of uncertainty, it is not only in the education sector, it is all over the world, and all over the country, and all over the sectors. It is very unfortunate that COVID came, a pandemic came, but between the pandemic, we had to choose life first.
Yep.
And so a number of measures came up, including the measure that now is making us battle a lot, the idea of locking up the country, but also locking up schools and keeping the young people home. It would have been okay if they were home for some time and COVID had subsided.
Yeah.
But now that COVID is not going, the lockdown is on, the lockdown is continuing, seems like people are not very sure. There's generally worry among many of the education stakeholders.
Yeah.
The parents are worried. They don't know when school is starting again. Children are home. They are growing too fast.
True.
They are eating a lot. Their size, they are growing. Some of them are growing beyond their teachers.
Oh, yes.
And the children are also very worried. I was counseling a girl recently before she returned to her P7 school to complete the exams. She was worried that she's now taller than the teacher. She has bigger cheeks. She thought they are going to call her mommy. So children have those challenges. The boys have grown. Beards have come. They are 14, 15. The other day I was also at some school, and some boy was telling me they were laughing at me when I removed the mask because the beards had come.
I think
but the anxiety is also broader than that, because now those in senior one don't know when they are moving next. Those coming senior one don't know when they are coming on. The candidates, we don't seem to have candidate classes now. So all that causes anxiety. Many parents are not currently employed. They are wondering when school finally opens, how are they going to get the resources? So all these are issues that really make our people worry. And I'm glad these people of Earward and World Vision really partnered with government to come and have a dialogue, a discussion over these issues.
Wow. We're going to be reflecting on that and more. I understand now my minister is already online to start off this conversation. By the way, you can be a part of this conversation online. Just make sure that you follow the conversation on NTV, different handles. Do we have the minister already online? Because we're dealing with technology, a lot more is actually going on. Do we have the minister online? Okay. Given that we don't have the minister online, but because of time, we're just going to start this conversation. The minister will actually find us as and when she arrives. I'm sure it's technology glitches they're trying to fix there. Let me start with you, Mr. Kaboyo, because according to my program, you come in fast.
Let me give the remarks. The Honorable Minister of State for Youth and Children Affairs, Honorable Sarah Mateke, Honorable Members of Parliament on panel and those attending virtually, the Director Basic and Secondary Education, Haji Ismail Mlindwa, the Chief of Basic Education and Adolescent Development at UNICEF, the Program Quality Director, World Vision Uganda, the Country Director, International Aid Services, the Education Lead, Save the Children, esteemed panelists for this national dialogue, the virtual online audience, and those viewing us from your living room, ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to welcome you to this virtual national dialogue on the future of children and education in Uganda. What a better opportunity we have. Ladies and gentlemen, the book of Ecclesiastes in the Bible tells us that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity. This, therefore, is the right time for a national dialogue on the future of children and education, because society seems to be silent, anxious, paranoid, fearful, and uncertain of the future of learners at school. As citizens, we are concerned about learners' health and their routine medical checks at home and at school. The fear for the unknown among education stakeholders needs to be addressed through structured conversations like the one we are having in the 3 days beginning today. On behalf of the Education Advocacy with a Difference platform and its members, allow me to sincerely thank World Vision Uganda, UNICEF, Oxfam, International Aid Services, Save the Children, and all partners for the financial, technical, and strategic support to this important virtual dialogue. Most importantly, I thank you, whoever is joining us, for sparing time and data to join this conversation. Investing in population health, nutrition, early childhood development, sanitation and hygiene, basic education, and tackling vulnerabilities helps set the foundation for the required human capital. And this is a statement well articulated in the National Development Plan 3 that concludes in 2025. To realize this theme for the national dialogue and also begin the process for real human capital investment and development, we need to reflect on whether learners have been learning during the first and second lockdown, but we also need to be concerned about the learning crisis resulting in learning loss, which will definitely endanger all learners at all levels of education. Many learners cannot access internet, and their parents have no smartphones to facilitate that learning. We need to rethink the concept of home learning, learning in refugees and host communities, and also reflect on how the two communities are integrating. Being in phase 4 of the pandemic calls for continuity of vigilance and discipline among the public. We need to preach the gospel of reducing the high rate of transmission and risk getting COVID-19. COVID-19 has widened the inequality gap. We see continuous lockdown which will escalate education challenges, and this will increase the danger of psychological and psychosocial imbalance among learners, teachers, and parents. This will definitely cause severe disorders among teachers and learners to negatively impact on the teaching and learning process at all levels. So as an advocacy group and partner in the delivery of education and training services, we pledge, 1, to roll out a sensitization campaign targeting all education institutions to adapt to a new culture of communication and reporting. Schools should disclose information to parents and authority regarding health and academics of the learners. Many parents got COVID from their children who returned from school at the beginning of the second lockdown. Sadly, some are still sick, some are recovering, but we also know that there are those who passed on. There is need, therefore, for collection of COVID-19 related data in learning institutions regarding infections. We also pledge to roll out a specific country-wide campaign on sensitization for vaccination for all teachers, and this will guarantee safe reopening of learning institutions because schools cannot remain closed forever. We also pledge to work closely with the Ministry of Education and that of gender and development partners, including civil society, to ensure that we prioritize communication and outreach programs. We also pledge to formally engage the Ministry of Education and Sports to demand for a supplementary budget which must enable education institutions get on their knees to stand and offer quality education to all without discrimination. This should be a priority that the Parliament of Uganda should accord the sector a supplementary budget, because we know there are a number of private schools that are closed and some are getting sold. But if the stimulus package is given, it will offset the sector for quality education. Finally, as an advocacy group, we shall disseminate the report that is going to come out of the 3 engagement, and this we shall do as soon as the 3 days are done. In conclusion, Education Advocacy with a Difference and its partners will continue the solution-based advocacy to work to complement government efforts in delivering efficient and effective service delivery. We are embarking also on a specific campaign to ensure that those in early childhood development and care services are brought to a conversation for the future of those learners at that level. And we also pledge to engage religious leaders. I thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you so much. That is Patrick Kaboya. We're still having this conversation started. It's a dialogue about education and the uncertainty that are currently at play as we look upon the end of the lockdown and children going back to school. I understand we've been joined by UNICEF Uganda's Refugee Response Director, that is Miss Mary Njeri. A very good morning, Mary. And I understand still we have a couple of them here. Nabera Dal, a very good morning. Now going forward, let's hear from the Program Quality Director from the World Vision, one of our key partners in this. That is Mr. Richard Ramsey. Richard, what are your remarks as we're starting off this?
Good morning, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. Honourable Sarah Mateke Nirabachisi, Minister of State in charge of Children and Youth, members of Parliament and chairpersons of different parliamentary committees, Haji Ismail Mulindwa, Director of Basic and Secondary Education from the Ministry of Education and Sports, commissioners from different ministries present, heads of staff in different government and international agencies, members of the Education Development Partners subgroup, the civil society and NGO community. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. And it's a real honor to be able to present on behalf of World Vision Uganda, who are co-hosting this national dialogue on this really critical subject of the implications of the current COVID crisis on the future education of our children across this nation. Personally speaking, I have two children at home who are also suffering from this same reality that many of us are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. As it's often been said, we're in unprecedented times where schools are closed, no public transport, and social distancing is becoming normal. All of which are not normal, but may in fact be things we have to contend with for some time to come yet. We're in uncharted territory. We need to find ways to quickly adapt education systems to become effective under this new normal situation. I think history books are going to look back on these COVID years and judge us on whether we rose to the challenge or whether we neglected the education of children in this generation. You'll be acutely aware that around the world, around 1.16 billion children globally, and around 15 million children in Uganda have missed school in one way or another over this past year as a result of the pandemic. It's a massive issue. One Vision studies have also projected that between 2 to 4 million girls in sub-Saharan Africa alone will not actually go back to school, regardless of when they open, because they will either have been married off early or become pregnant. And this is a tragedy for girls' education. All the more reason for us to act now and act fast to find innovative solutions to this big challenge. World Vision was itself born out of crisis some 70 years ago during the Korean War, and it continues to survive, adapt and thrive in some of the world's worst disasters. As such, over the past year, World Vision has launched our largest ever humanitarian response globally to address the spread of this virus and the negative social and economic implications and impacts of the various containment measures that have had to be put in place by governments. Ladies and gentlemen, it's with this spirit that we launched this 3-day dialogue. We must find solutions and scale up interventions that will enable our children's continued learning even whilst at home. Whilst it's tempting to do so, we cannot afford to retreat during the pandemic because the cost of inaction for the current generation of children is way higher than the cost of action. We are called to act. This dialogue should compel us to ask ourselves critical and maybe uncomfortable questions. Is education only feasible within the walls of a primary or secondary school? How can we take education to the children as opposed to them looking for it themselves? How do education systems remain functional and resilient and retain high standards in learning outcomes for children during prolonged periods of lockdown? What if this situation goes on for much longer? We must find solutions. What have we learnt in the past 1 year or so on which innovations in education actually work and could be scaled up potentially? How can technology be used effectively? We're using it today. How can it be used effectively to engage children remotely and ensure education continues? I'm sure that all these questions and more will be addressed during this 3-day dialogue. And I wish to extend World Vision's sincere appreciation to all partners and reiterate our commitment to collaborate and work with civil society, NGOs, government departments, and the donor community to ensure that every child is reached with critical services necessary for their growth and future development. My best wishes and every success in this really important dialogue. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Richard Ramsey, that he happens to be the Quality Program Director of the World Vision and such a great partner. This program and the dialogue is brought to you by EWAD. Of course, we have the World Vision, the Ministry of Education and Sports, and other development partners. Now, that said, ladies and gentlemen, as earlier told you that very soon we'll be joined by the Honorable Minister of State in charge of Children and Youth, Honorable Sarah Mateke. A very good morning, Honorable.
Morning.
It's very exciting to have you here this early morning. What are your remarks as we're starting this dialogue about education and the children in the current crisis where we're longing?
Thank you so much, moderator, honorable members of parliament, the chairperson of committees of parliament, the director basic and secondary education, Haji Ismail Mudindwa, the commissioners of government, ministries, departments, and agencies, Mr. Richard Ramsey, the program quality director, Mr. Nabdera Dahari, the chief of education at UNICEF, Ms. Juliet Namkasa, the country director, International Aid Services, Mr. Francis Shati Odokrach, the country director, Oxfam Uganda.
Minister, can you hear me?
I hope that is okay.
Honorable, you're framing.
What's me? Okay.
You're framing. I could not see you better. Okay, that's perfect. Okay, Honorable, carry on.
Save the Children, the technical advisor, education advocacy with the Difference platform, esteemed panelists, ladies and gentlemen. First, allow me to appreciate the organizers and funders of this virtual national dialogue to discuss the future of the country's children and education. Thank you to World Vision, UNICEF, Oxfam Uganda, Uganda International Aid Services, Save the Children, and all other partners for partnering with the education advocacy with the Difference platform in organizing this important national dialogue. The importance of this dialogue cannot be emphasized at this time than the current situation in which COVID-19 pandemic continues to ravage and disorganize the whole society fabric. You are all aware the country continues to lose its human capital to the pandemic and disruption of the socio-economic activity of the country and the world at large. Ladies and gentlemen, the focus of this dialogue is the future of our children and their education. This focus is very pertinent as it gives opportunity for the shareholders to deliberate on the critical segments of society. Children are the foundation of much needed qualitative and enhanced human capital that the country is yearning for to drive the economy and make it very competitive in the region and the world all over. It is very important that we broaden the dialogue on the future of the children beyond education. The rights of children are provided holistically. The purpose of emphasis, you cannot guarantee the right of children to education and ignore the right to survival, the right to health, protection, and participation. Since the first lockdown last year in March, and this one from June to July this year, children have not remained the same. A lot of disturbing incidences are happening in the children's homes and in the communities. The country has seen unprecedented increase in the number of children being abused. Defilement, teenage pregnancy have also increased, physical abuse, neglect, child-to-child sex. The vices, if left unabated, paint an oblique future for the education of our children. Ladies and gentlemen, the statistics from Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development, using our helpline of Sauti 116, for the month of June 2021, the most prevalent form of violence reported, making up to 48.2% of the cases, mostly is child neglect. Most of our children have been abandoned by their biological fathers, that is around 80.5%, and they have abandoned them and failed to take up their responsibility as parents. Sexual violence was the second that was reported, which made up to 23.5%. All the survivors were female and having a victim of 4 years. And this 4-year child was a victim of defilement, which is really very, very sad. Unrelated adult males, neighbors, strangers, friends made up the bulk of 85% of the abusers, while the rest were family members. It is so disturbing, and it really disturbs me now, the fact that fathers are sleeping with their own daughters. And it is also very perturbing when you find that children who come from well-to-do families are also experiencing the same. And this brings out the reality that vulnerability of children is bigger in scope and depth, as opposed to the usual assertion that child vulnerability is as a result of family breakdown or moral decay, orphanhood, low household income, and poverty, mentioned but a few. So the vulnerability of children is really cross-cutting, whether you're from a well-to-do family or you're from any other family related to that. Ladies and gentlemen, over the years, government has progressively developed various laws, policies, and programs to guarantee the future of children of Uganda. The effective implementation of UPE, USE, and the integrated early childhood development are central in securing the education of our children, but being hampered by COVID-19 pandemic. Many people think because of the lockdown, closure of education institutions, specifically, the future of our children is doomed. I don't think so. I don't think so, because we still have opportunities like this. And I think that's why we are here in these national dialogues, that we forge a way forward together. My advice is to us all that in the meantime, carry out our our responsibility as parents, we should put all our energies to safeguard our children from these vultures who are ready to spoil the future of our children. And these vultures are both physical and technological. Parenting is something that is very, very important, and we need it for our children. And if you value something, you give it time. I believe that if we would carry out our responsibility as parents, value the children that we have, we shall give them time. My ministry is responsible for spearheading development of legal and policy framework, coordination, capacity building, resource mobilization, and support, supervision, and monitoring for promoting child well-being. I pledge consistent performance to ensure these functions are upheld. The ministry has put in place the National Child Policy 2020 and its implementation plan 2020, 2021 to 2024, 2025. This plan brings together the whole of government in its implementation arrangement in line with the planning and budgeting arrangement under NDP3. The policy recognizes coordination as a strong area of emphasis to achieve the policy aspirations. To this effect, my ministry for the last 5 months, with the support from partners like UNICEF, World Vision, Child One, Uganda Center for Justice and Innovation, disseminated the National Child You can get me now?
Yes, I can get you as you're finalizing because of time.
Child One Uganda, Justice Center for Justice Innovation. The National Child Policy has been disseminated in 28 districts and establishing child well-being committees in the same districts. If it was not for the challenge of COVID-19, I believe that we would have spread more districts by now. As I conclude, let's not lose hope about our children. Let's follow the SOPs, play our role as a parent, as a community leader, media, civil society organization, religious and cultural leaders to protect and secure the future of our children. When schools reopen, the children will go back to school. Government is equally concerned about the future of the children, but life must be secured first. I thank Education Advocacy with the Difference and her partners, World Vision, International Aid Services, Oxfam Uganda, UNICEF, and Save the Children for the excellent idea of having this national dialogue to run for 3 days. I hope to receive a report detailing all the proceedings of the 3 days engagement. Let me take this opportunity to officially open the national dialogue on the future of our children and education in Uganda. Thank you for God and my country.
Thank you so much, Honorable. That is the Minister in charge of Youth and Children, Honorable Sarah Mateke. It's a dialogue that is going to go for 3 days and will be live on NTV. As you're following this conversation, we'll take a break for now and we'll be back shortly. Well, it's a conversation, it's a national dialogue for education on the future of children and the education in Uganda. You and I are part of this conversation. You can follow this conversation on Twitter and on YouTube. I can see a couple of your comments coming in online. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And those on Facebook, it's very, very gratifying. Now, for the next conversation, Mr. Simakula, these other experts, I want you to take it away because you're an expert in that.
Thank you very much, Andrew, for continuously calling me an expert.
Of course.
But I know that whoever is invited for this dialogue is an expert in his own way. And as Patrick earlier on indicated, we have experts from all over. Academicians, CSOs, line ministries, parents, teachers, and so on.
Oh, yes.
But of course, in the interest of
Yes,
time, we
Lina.
need to know that we have quite a number of these who will
I'm
be
on live
presenting.
TV, yes.
And right about now, we are meant to be hearing from the Director of Basic and Secondary Education at the Ministry of Education and Sports. But he still has a small technical itch. He's getting prepared. And I know that we can move on as he gets set. So we'll then have the pleasure to introduce a panel of very important people in this country, a panel of development partners who are going to come and address us on how they see the things and actually give a statement to this dialogue concerning what they think can be better to put the education system back to normal. So on the line is Nabendra Dahal, Chief Basic Education and Adolescent Development, UNICEF, but also Mary Njeri, Refugee Response Director from World Vision Uganda, and we shall also be expecting Diana Seka Jabagarukayo, an education specialist from World Bank. Right now, I can comfortably state that Mr. Nabendra Dahal is ready to address us. Mr. Nabendra, you're welcome.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, we can.
Okay, Honorable Minister, fellow panelists, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. In the interest of time, please accept my appropriate respects to all of you. I thank the organizers for this important initiative and for the opportunity to be part of it. This is a very important dialogue, relates to the future of this country. No, needless to say, future of a generation of children. Before I reflect a little bit on the issue of continuity of learning, let me begin by agreeing with the Honorable Minister that UNICEF also believes the future of children and the future of children's education, in particular in this country, is bright. The challenge is how we manage the present. Although it will be difficult for many of us to believe the future is bright, in the context we are all going through, let me share with you the 4 reasons why I believe the future is bright. First of all, we have seen political commitment from the highest level. The Right Honorable President is part of the Global Summit for Education, which is raising $5 billion for Global Partnership for Education, has signed a statement committing to increase the share of education budget towards 20%, to do everything possible to interview the exact worries towards increasing the education budget to 20% by 2025. This is a statement that had not come so categorically from the highest political level for the past 2 decades, and the country should take it very seriously. This has been followed up by the letter from the Honorable Minister of Education, the First Lady, the Mama Janet Museveni, who wrote to GPE also stating that education budget will be gradually increased. This has put Uganda in a strong position to get over $162 million
Recording in progress.
From Global Partnership for Education as part of the partnership. In this political commitment is masked by another second development, which is second reason for my optimism. One of the educationists has become the permanent secretary of Ministry of Education. We have the political commitment. We have the man in place to make the political commitment happen. Well, if an educationist cannot translate the political commitment to action by the Ministry of Finance, which has been the main issue in the past, that's unfortunate. But given the history we know about the permanent secretary, we are confident that the political commitment will be translated into actions and reality by Ministry of Finance. Third reason is what we are going through today. After the lockdown, although lockdown has been very devastating, it has increased the profile of the education sector. We are all talking about learning now, not just enrollment. So this is another reason when the whole country is aware of the value of education, we believe the future will be secure for the children and the country. Last but not least, the parents have shown an amazing commitment to education. Parents fund the entire early learning pre-primary sector. They fund the primary education sector partially. 1/3 of the parents send their children to private schools and pay the full fee. Even in UP schools, the parents pay to the school and even to government in the form of examination fee to UNEP. Secondary education partially funded by parents. Tertiary education partially funded by parents. Parents put up a biggest share if we calculate, including the indirect, direct, and opportunity cost of education in sustaining the education system and building the future. For these 4 reasons, UNICEF believes that the future of education and future of education of children in Uganda is assured. Now let me reflect a little bit on continuity of learning in this background. First of all, we believe that we need to be, UNICEF believes that the country, all of us need to believe that continuity of education is possible and we will make it happen. One of the lessons we can learn from the past is to avoid uncertainty and confusion. If we all believe, if the country believes that continuity of learning is possible, maybe some of it will happen in the school, some of it will happen outside the school, in community groups, some of it will happen at home, some of it will happen through digital means, through radio, through TV, but let's commit that every single day our children, the future of this country, will be learning. And let's believe that we can make it happen. Currently, 171 countries in the world have opened the schools, partially or fully. Even neighboring countries like Kenya and Tanzania, they have opened the schools. If 171 countries and other countries whose education system was much weaker than ours in the past are able to open schools and provide education, I don't know why Uganda needs to doubt itself. Uganda can. All we need to do is we need to believe that we can do it and find the commitment and resources for it. Yes, I know we need resources, but let's not forget, last year in 2020 fiscal year, although the teaching learning was not happening in most of the times, education sector is still open. Education sector spent 3.6 trillion Ugandan shilling last fiscal year. That means almost 9.9 billion shillings per day of every single day of 2020, from July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. If we spend that amount of money and the result was not sure because we closed down the teaching learning process, we need to learn from it and reflect why couldn't we get the best result out of that big investment. Teachers were being paid, education functionaries were being paid, education institutions were being maintained. $3.6 trillion is not a small amount of money. Why couldn't we get the best result out of it? Because it felt as if we could afford a big, huge car, maybe $56,000, costing $56,000, but we couldn't find money to fix the tire. For example, if we were able to generate an additional small amount of money compared to the $3.6 trillion education budget we spent to meet the SOPs, to make sure that the schools follow the SOPs, and to ensure that any cases that come in schools were properly maintained, we could have ensured teaching learning and get the maximum benefit out of the $3.6 trillion or 3.6 trillion shillings or 9.9 billion shillings per day we spent last year. Let's not repeat the same mistake again. Another education budget will be spent, but if we don't find the small additional money to make sure that the teaching learning actually takes place, that huge education budget will not be fully, will not produce the full results. And I'm glad that we are talking about continuity of learning. If we want to ensure continuity of learning, we need to explore all options. Let's not propose one size fits all. Let's find local solutions. Let's go to find partnership with the parents, with the local government, with teachers, with the district education committee, with local governments. Let's go by school and see what support will this school need.
Mr. Abendo, because of time, as you're finalizing, because of time, can we cut this short? Finally?
Thank you. So let's build partnership across all levels, across all sectors, with the belief that we will do everything possible to make the teaching learning process take place, be it in school, be it between school and community, be it in the community, be it at home, be it in internet or radio or TV. Let's believe in our capacity to educate our children. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nabendra, for the commitments and the promise that development partners are really very willing to support government in carrying forward the mission that our children must continue to learn, whatever the circumstances. And we also want to thank you so much for the confidence you show when you're talking about education issues in this country and for the love. So in the interest of time, we now want to quickly move in to get another statement from Mary Njeri, Refugee Response Director, World Vision Uganda. Mary, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome,
thank you so much.
Kindly talk to us.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm really happy to be here to represent the voice of the refugee children and communities. So I'd like to just speak from where the UNICEF Chief of Education has talked, where he's saying that we must believe that continuity is possible and make it happen and explore all options to see that it happens. I really love the positive momentum that this dialogue is taking. So I'd like to share during this small time that I have to share briefly on how World Vision has gone on to explore some options and to see how we can support children, mainly in the refugee settlements, to continue learning. And this is especially our experience during the first lockdown. So for the refugee children or the refugees the children in the refugee settlements, learning centers are really more than just learning. It's an opportunity for them to learn, yes, but also an opportunity for them to play because we have sufficient space, we have items for play there, we have instructors. It's an opportunity for them to socialize and make friends, an opportunity for protection from violence, from abuse, exploitation, and also an opportunity for them to access psychosocial support. And not only for the children, but it also gives parents an opportunity to engage in other activities because they are aware that children are in good hands and they're able to move on to their saving group. They are able to continue with farming or whatever other engagements they may have for the day. So this is what changed when we had to have schools closed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic measures. So what happened is that children were presented with such a situation that exposed them to so much violence and denied them an opportunity for play and also for them to engage, of course, in learning. So we see that these disruptions in their instructional time impact them maybe much more than other children because we notice that children who are marginalized, and the longer they stay out of school, the harder it will be for them to come back. And we've seen this like when they've come just into the country and being out of school for so long time from the country they are coming from, it takes a lot of persuasion to get them to go back to learning. So this is one of the risks that we start right now. How do we get them back after a year? And then there is this issue of increased risk of teenage pregnancies. As we speak now, thousands of young girls within the settlements are pregnant or have just given birth. So what this means is that there are also thousands of children whose life, unless something changes, will be very unfruitful. We talked about the negative impacts that these schools, the settlements, where the learning centers is an opportunity for them to access other facilities, things like immunization, things like psychosocial support, but this is not happening. So that is the backdrop against which World Vision moved on to work with various partners to start what we call home-based learning, play and learning. And to be honest, this was actually, this innovation came up as we observed children. What we noted is that as children were made to stay at home and away from the learning centers, While others, got into so many things, were getting hurt, climbing trees, breaking their legs and all that, there are others who got into small groups and started learning.
Hello, Mary, if you may allow me to just
what they had learned before.
Mary,
when they were in school.
We really like all the beautiful ideas you're putting forward, but I want to request that you really sum them up in the next 2 minutes. We seem to be caught up in time, and we still have great presentations similar to yours.
That's
Thank you very
okay.
much. In the next 1 minute
what we did was to start this initiative of home-based learning, where we have the instructors used to instruct them within the centers, go and visit them within the communities where they learn. So they learn there, they play there, and we ensure that they observe, of course, the SOPs to ensure that they do not infect the children. But this has been an opportunity for children to learn. So what are we learning from it? As the minister said, as the Chief of Education for UNICEF said, is that it is possible to continue with education if we continue to invest, because this calls for us to go beyond what we usually do. And the other thing that it calls for is partnership, that no one person can do it, not only the government, not UNICEF, not World Vision, but all of us, and especially the parents, need to be central to this. So these are the lessons that we are learning and seeing that we can take it forward. And of course, our children can continue learning even as we explore how to go back to school. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We know we can continue sharing the notes later. You'll forward them to all the participants in this dialogue. Right about now, I want to invite our dear Director of Basic and Secondary Education, Alhaji Ismail Molindwa from the Ministry of Education and Sports, to give us his remarks. My dear boss, Mr. Molindwa, I'm glad to receive you, but we are caught up by time. We pray that you really summarize the beautiful things you had planned to tell us.
Okay, I think Haji is not with us again. He has dropped off because of network, but it's a great conversation. I like the summary that came through from Mary. It shows that there is an intention from the different stakeholders to amplify education.
Yep.
But what we need to do is the call to action as parents. The parents need to, and well, as policymakers are doing their job, the parents equally too need to actually be involved in this conversation on how best we can amplify and make sure that the realities and the perfect way to raise the children in this pandemic are raised. Can I have the ones on Zoom and I see who we have already with us? Do we still have Haji with us? Has he joined us?
Okay, maybe in that case we invite Diana, who seems to be very ready.
Okay.
And give her some 3 minutes.
Diana Sekaja.
Diana Sekaja Bagaruhayo, Education Specialist, World Bank.
Diana, can we see you? Diana, can we have your visual?
Hello, Diana.
Diana Sekaja. Okay, she's here.
Okay. Welcome, Diana Sekaja from World Bank. We are gladly waiting to hear from you. Incidentally, we've run out of time, so we kindly beg that you really summarize. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not going to say much because I have just joined the conversation. I just received the link. So I wasn't part of the earlier discussions, but I trust that my colleague from UNICEF has represented the development partners well. From the World Bank side, we work closely with UNICEF, and both at global level and at country level. And UNICEF is leading the COVID response on behalf of the development partners. But maybe just to add my voice to the discussion and the debate here, or the discussion that we're having here today, I think as a country, we need to prepare both for the situation when the schools are closed and when they finally reopen. Prior to reopening, and I think it has been mentioned here, we need to look at the safety of the children. It's been coming up a lot in the media and in the press. Schools shouldn't just be open to keep the girls safe, but we also need to look at safety within the home environment. And again here, the responsibility lies both on the parents, but also the local authorities. And the government has worked a lot to put in place structures to ensure that if there's any physical or sexual violence, both within the schools or outside of the schools, there's a mechanism to report that. So I think we need to really emphasize on safety and the role of the community and the parents. And then one other point I would like to also raise is even as schools are closed, we need to, again, continue to look at innovative ways that learning can continue for the different sections of the population. So we know that the government is doing radio, television, distributing hard copies. We can't have one solution to fit all communities in different parts of the country, but we need to embrace the different innovations. So it really requires a mindset shift to know that, yes, you can learn on radio, yes, you can learn on TV, at least to keep the mind working before schools are open again. So just really for the media to emphasize and to put that word out there, that we need to adapt. These are different times. Things are not the same as they were many years ago. We need to adapt to flexible ways of working. And then lastly, just to also encourage, I think from the ministry side particularly, and the different education people, we have invested a lot in accelerated education programs for refugees mainly and refugee hosting communities. And these programs shorten the learning period. For example, S1 and S2 is shortened into a single year. I think we need to, moving ahead, we need to look at, once the children are back to school, how do they then catch up on what they have learned?
Nice.
Can we have catch-up programs? Can we condense the curricula to have, just the basic information passed on? So we need to also adapt to that and not think that when schools reopen, we're going to put the children under so much pressure to learn so much. So we need to look into creative ways of delivering learning.
I have few remarks I will speak.
Thank you. Let me stop there for now.
Thank you.
But thank you for this discussion.
Thank you so much, Dan Sekaja from the World Bank. It's a conversation that is still ongoing. In our Zoom links, this conversation is still ongoing, but it is proudly brought to you by World Vision. Of course, we have Save the Children, we have UNICEF, Oxfam, Minister of Gender, Education, Health and Local Government, and of course organized by the Advocacy with Education Advocacy with a Difference. I'm Andrew Chamagero. This conversation is still ongoing in the Zoom links. And my panelists, you don't need to leave because we're just getting off the TV now and we keep the conversation.